Welcome to Beyond the Break, a podcast where we dive deep into the stories behind today's entrepreneurs, leaders, and change makers, and we uncover what it takes to build something that lasts. Let's get started. Beyond the Break.
Welcome to Beyond the Break. I'm really thrilled to have Jackson Taylor in the studio here with us today in Ponte Vedra Beach. And we're going to talk a little bit about your background and what's led you into the physical therapy world. And I've been fortunate to have Jackson work on me, get me back literally walking again through a few hip injuries that I've had over the years, and other family members as well have all been cured by you. So I thought no one better to be in the studio today to talk about, all things health. And that's something that's near and dear to my heart. So welcome, Jackson.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And yes, I think I have been involved with every Greco at this point.
Yes, it's important.
In some capacity. And they keep coming back. Yeah. So maybe I'm doing something wrong. I don't know. I have to figure that out.
That's right. So what led you down the path of the physical therapy world?
Yeah, so it's a little convoluted of sorts. So when I was in high school, I knew I wanted to be in some kind of health. Mm-hmm. I wasn't sure if that was strength and conditioning. I wasn't sure if that was, I was really dead set, oddly enough, on being like a neurosurgeon for pediatrics, for kids.
Excellent.
I don't really know why. I then did a little digging into what that would require of me and got a little skittish. So that went the other way. Started looking at physical therapy kind of as I got into, my freshman-ish year of college. But I was still kind of looking at the med school route and just wasn't really sure.
You were an athlete.
I played football in college. I spent 2 seasons at the University of Maine, and then I transferred to Wesleyan University in Middletown, Connecticut. But played football, dealt with all the injuries and stuff. But I had been training people in a strength and conditioning standpoint since I was like 18-ish.
Oh, okay.
And so I worked at like the rec centers, and all my buddies were like, hey, can you write me programs? And so I was kind of always in the fitness, S&C, performance world.
Okay.
I took that really seriously myself when I was in college. I always was like, I have to squat the most, I have to deadlift the most, I have to clean, like I have to be the strongest dude that I can be, or at least be close to the strongest guy that I can be. And I did a good job of that, but I almost made that my focus more than the sport itself, if you will.
It can go down that path.
Yeah. So I went through all that, and then when I was heading to graduate, I was like, maybe physical therapy is what I want to do. It's a good field. It seems like a stable field. I didn't really have any other reason besides like, I'll just do it.
Yeah.
So I applied to the University of St. Augustine, here in St. Augustine, and I got in and immediately went. And so spent my time there. I worked full time when I was in grad school. So the cool thing about USA was they had the flex program. And so I worked full time the first 2 years at a CrossFit gym down there as a strength coach. And then the last 2 years, I was the executive director of the Police Athletic League.
Oh, great.
In St. Johns County. And that was a crazy experience. Like I had 6 or 7
kids.
With kids. Yes, it was a few hundred, 500-ish kids that we had in like flag football alone.
Yeah. But
it was a couple of thousand kids that we worked with. I had a few law enforcement officers that worked under me, and we had support staff. And, for me to be like a 25 years old, 26 years old, and doing that was a really cool opportunity. But I kind of worked through school and kept doing strength and conditioning. I owned my company already at this point. I was just kind of...
So you've been an entrepreneur since day one, pretty much.
Sort of. Yeah. I think I was probably more of what you would call a faux entrepreneur in the beginning, where it was kind of like, I act like I'm one, but I haven't really taken the step into being one.
Yeah.
That didn't really happen until I finished grad school. And I started working, I traveled as a physical therapist. I did traveling PT, which moved me back up to New England. And I just started being in a clinic and kind of seeing how it all worked and working your typical schedule and being like, maybe someday I'll own a clinic or this or that.
Yeah.
And inevitably, I became really disillusioned with healthcare, and just with seeing how unhealthy people generally were, and that we really weren't moving the needle. Like they'd get better for the 10 or 12 weeks that you saw them. They'd leave. They'd be back. There was really no change factor.
Yeah. What do you think are some of the the culprits of that? What is the bad advice out there? What's broken in the mainstream process for that?
A lot of things. I think one of them is that we are so obsessed with fixing symptoms, and we really don't care about root causes.
Yeah.
And a lot of things we really don't know what the root cause is. It's like you have an injury and it's like, well, it could be from X, Y, Z, or D. But the way we treat it is like a symptom.
Yeah.
And that to me is more problematic than anything else, is that we just, everything is almost more of a like, what's going to make this person come back to me?
Yeah.
I've told a lot of people that healthcare has turned into, I'm treating a, hip injury or a knee replacement or a rotator cuff tear versus I'm treating Chris.
Yeah.
Who has a rotator cuff tear or a hip injury or whatever it is. The humanity side of it, I think, has been pushed out a little bit.
Yeah.
And to that end, we've gotten a little bit hocus pocusy, I think, with everyone wants to sell a program and they want to sell this new treatment protocol and how fast can I do that?
Yeah.
Versus what's in the best interest of this person. And, society's gotten used to, I want quick fixes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the mixture of all those things has just led to kind of this big downfall of people and how they approach all of that. And I hated that.
Do you get into some of the things about diet and other lifestyle greater than just if the knee hurts?
Oh, yeah. I mean, my company, so I founded Taylor Strength, which I've now probably renamed. It started as Prevail Strength, and then it became Anchor Forge, and then it turned into Taylor Physical Therapy. Then it was Taylor Sports Performance and Physical Therapy. Then just Taylor.
So now we're Taylor.
Now we're Taylor.
I like it.
We're staying. We're staying there. It's just funny to think about. Like that's the thing that's going to make my company different. Is I just got to keep changing the name.
Yeah.
That's not the truth for anyone out there who wants to be an entrepreneur, because that's it's a lot of calls with the graphic design people.
I just have always thought of you as Jackson, by the way.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
It's actually, it works out great. So my company is almost fully designed around men.
Mm-hmm.
So what I was saying about like being disillusioned, I just kept seeing men coming in that were just incredibly unhealthy.
Mm-hmm.
And you start doing some digging on like testosterone levels now versus the 1970s. It's like 1% drop a year since like 1980.
What do you think's causing that?
A lot of things. A lot of it's driven by the fact that we're just unhealthy.
Yeah.
75% of the male population in the U.S. is overweight.
Mm-hmm.
Half of that being obese. And those statistics can be a little bit funky, but it's the truth. It's just that most of us are overweight. We don't exercise. Less than 20-21% of adult males get enough exercise per week based on physical activity guidelines. We eat like crap. We don't sleep very well. We drink a lot. Like it's just all these factors. And as a general statement, we also work less with our hands. Mm-hmm. As you go back in time, people worked outdoors a lot of manual labor.
Yeah.
That's exercise for all intents and purposes and is much harder than people give it credit for. And so we've lost a lot of that across time. And then I started getting a little bit involved with like suicide rates in men, fatherlessness with men, and was just like, what the heck's happening to the male population? And so I kind of pivoted my business towards that because, I'm a guy, I had a very amazing dad who was an incredible father, friend, husband, man, my godfather the same way, my mentors. And I'm like, where are those people? And so I started focusing on men in that world. So my company almost strictly deals with taking men that want to be more capable. Our tagline is forging capable men. Okay. We want them to be able to be strong dads, to be able to be healthy, to live for their kids as long as possible, to be able to see their grandkids. And to, I love when I get a client who asks like, hey, I can't get on the ground with my grandkids. Like it hurts too much or I'm not strong enough.
Oh yeah.
I want to be able to play with my grandkids. And so we take them through and we do some testing and we get them stronger and they start being able to play with their grandkids, or people that are just like, I've got like 80 pounds of extra weight and it's hindering me. Yeah. Like I feel like I look in the mirror and I'm just like, am I really just going to be this soft, pillowy guy? Yeah. Am I proud of that? And society has kind of praised that a little bit. It's become normal. but so has, men die at heart disease at a crazy rate. I think 13 of the 15 biggest killers of men worldwide, or at least in the US, or the 15 biggest killers of people. Men die at a bigger rate in almost all of them except for 2 compared to women. Like more heart disease, like Alzheimer's was one of the few that women die of more than men still. But otherwise, like men are just dying in droves because they're so unhealthy.
Yeah.
And they don't feel good about themselves. They don't feel like they can get up and go. They they lack that confidence. And I just thought, I know now that I'm a dad, I've got a little 2-month-old.
Yeah. Now you got to think about all that.
You think about all of it. Well, in the sense that, like, I lost my dad really young, not because of him being unhealthy. He just had a, crap disease that got him. But thinking to myself, so many heart attacks every year from men and just being unhealthy. And even if they are living, they might as well be 6 feet deep because they're not able to do the things they want to do.
Sure.
And it was so important to me to have time with my old man and like with my friends and their kids. Like, why would I miss that?
Yeah.
And so for me, with the guys that I work with, it's all about how can we make the rest of your life just get better and better and better so that you can enjoy every step with your kids.
Yeah.
And so we dive into their strength, their nutrition, their biomarkers, their health habits. We'll do, I work with a couple of local doctors here, and then my guys that live all over the country will just make sure we get all their blood works done, see where they're at, where's their testosterone, get some accountability going. If their drinking is an issue, we find ways to cull that. But it's just giving them a holistic way to go, how healthy am I? How fit am I? And where do I want to be?
Yeah.
And that's really kind of our mission, is to make men more capable.
Because if you think of it, I always think back to like, what were we like 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago?
Yeah.
And that's how our body is built to live that way. Like you didn't wake up and have a breakfast right in front of you. You needed some physical activity. You needed to walk. And you were outside. And we've lost all of that to the point where now we're trying to replicate that at the beginning or the end of a workday. And you hit the gym, maybe, like you said, only 20% even do that. And you're trying to do something now within that hour window. And the reality is most of us only have an hour or 2 to dedicate if we decide that. So what would you recommend people do with that hour? And there's plenty of quick fixes, and some of them, I love sauna. I'm curious about cold plunge. I like getting out in the morning and getting sunlight in my eyes immediately. So what are some of the things that you've seen out there that you say do add value, and what would you say we should focus on? Yeah,
I think for 99% of it's really for 100% of people. For the most part, there's always, I guess, some exception. People are spending a lot of time on plunges, saunas, massage, etc., but they're not spending time on the things that actually make them harder to kill or more robust, which is at a bare minimum, we try to get people doing 2 days a week of 30 to 45 minutes of resistance training. Okay, that's bands, dumbbells, barbells, etc. Right, 2 days a week of resistance training. And then from like a cardiovascular perspective, we're generally asking people to get between, these are the physical activity guidelines, 90 to 120 minutes of moderate aerobic activity. So as a general statement, that would be like 50 to 80% of whatever your max heart rate is. Okay. Like accumulating 90 to 120 minutes a week.
Can that be done with walking?
That can be done with walking.
Okay.
Usually a more robust walk, but especially depending on the person, like there are some guys I have where all they really can do is walk, and they'll talk to people on the phone as they walk and whatever, and we'll add a weight vest. We'll turn it into a ruck. I'll have them walk the beach versus walk the road because it's a little bit more uneven and it gets a little bit more of their heart rate up. It could be biking. It could be the beautiful thing about conditioning is it doesn't really care what you do. All it cares about is, did my heart rate do what I needed it to do? Yeah. Did it get elevated, right? Did I get into a little bit of zone 2 and zone 3? And did I just get into that zone? Mm-hmm. If people only did that like 90 minutes a week of aerobic activity and 2 days of resistance training, that's it. Yeah. A very large percentage of issues would be resolved. Like we know that VO2 max, basically how good you are at breathing, for no better use of the term, the max amount of oxygen you can take in, is one of our number 1 and 2 predictors of how long and how well you'll live. Okay. Like we just know that people with high VO2 maxes just live longer, and they tend to live better because they're just healthier. We also are now coming around to the idea that skeletal muscle mass, how much muscle you have, is another big predictor of how healthy you're going to be.
Yeah.
Right. It's a block to an issue really becoming a problem. I'll use this example. I have a great friend up in Canada who's a little older than me, got a really rare disease. Just one of those things where you're like, people, that's like a real thing. Overnight, essentially, became like a vegetable of sorts. They had him on ventilators and the whole 9 yards. And I won't explain. I'll have him explain his story a little bit better. If you look up Jared Maynard, he's incredible. But all of his muscle mass was gone. But he was a powerlifter before.
Okay.
Not a big one, but a powerlifter. And one of the things that he attributes his ability that he lived through this, which is just not, it's a miracle, right? Just a God thing. But he had a ton of muscle mass that he was able to lose. So it's a hedge for men against early death of sorts.
Yeah.
You get an infection, you go to the hospital, especially for older people, and you've got some muscle to lose. You might have some fat to lose too.
Yeah.
But if you have more muscle to lose, the damage isn't as big. So if someone goes in with 100 pounds of muscle mass versus someone that goes in with 70, they both lose 10%. The 70 that lost 10% is a big deal, even if it's a smaller number. Who had 100 losing 10% is like, yeah, it's a lot, but he's still pretty high.
Yeah.
No, he's still at 90 pounds of skeletal muscle mass. So if you can optimize your muscle mass and that little bit of cardiovascular work in a week, that's the golden goose.
Yeah.
That's what people don't want to do. But that's
it.
That's it.
Yeah.
You know, they'll get these shakes. They'll pay people a bunch of money to do their food for them. It's great. It's just not the low-hanging fruit.
No, I think. And what about, in the vein of what you do muscular workouts is, I feel like now I've evolved to think more about legs than ever, because you think if people fall and get less stable as they get older, and, the joke usually is, never skip leg day, but I really feel like that should be more of a focus than even bench press or back, if you had to prioritize.
Yeah, I think that the thing that makes your legs important is because you walk on them, obviously. Like when adults get older, think about like your parents or things of that past the age of 65, maybe just for argument's sake. Most of the falls come because they lose their power. Yeah. So their strength obviously plays a role in that, but if they trip, they can't quickly move their foot forward to catch themselves. That's power. That's how quickly can I move.
That's a good point.
They might have the strength to be able to stand up, but they might not have the quickness or the power to quickly step. And so that's when we see a lot of fall. It's one of the reasons why with older adults, it is so wildly important to do things quickly, or to, like when you train, have them throw medicine balls, have them do quick step ups, or if they can still do some like hopping or jumping or skipping, they should be doing it. Yeah. Because so power is something that as decades go on drops more precipitously than strength and everything else. And so you want to maintain that for as long as possible. I think it's somewhere between 8 and 12%. I think every decade is what that drops as we get older. And muscle is like strength is like 6 to 8%. I think muscle is like 2 to 4%. My numbers are probably close, but not quite there.
Yeah.
But they lose that ability. And so it's something that we have to train. So from a lower body perspective, that's kind of all included in there. But yes, most people that go to the gym, especially guys, are, biceps, triceps, bench, back, etc., which is fine. I mean, it's important for those things to be strong. But your lower body, also just from like a caloric burn perspective, like strength training is actually a great way to build your cardiovascular health. Yeah. If you're doing certain supersets or intervals, and your legs are huge muscles. So if you do sets of lunges and sets of squats, like your heart rate inevitably is also going to go up more than if I'm doing curls or isolated.
And all that muscle's going to needs energy later.
Yeah, and it needs all of those things. And so it kills a lot of birds with one stone. Yeah. And it just makes you stronger. So there's really no downside to that.
Yeah. So let's get in a few of the fun things. Sauna. What do you think of that?
There is some decent data that there's some help there, especially infrared saunas. Okay. Just because you're not quite losing as intense amount of sweat. Yeah. Across, I think you have an infrared.
Yes. Yeah. I use it in the evening, and I find it helps me sleep wonderfully.
So there's what I tell people when it comes to saunas is if you like it, do it. Okay. If you can afford it, knock yourself out.
Yeah.
As long as I'm getting my training on the other side.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's kind of what I tell people when they're like, hey, I've got a sauna, I've got a cold plunge, I've got this massage therapist, I got this acupuncturist, I have all these things.
Yeah.
I'm like, those are cool. And I hope they help you.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't bother me if you use any of those tools because they're tools.
Yeah.
But I treat them like supplements. Like supplements should make up 5% or less of your diet.
Mm-hmm.
You still got to get your meat, potatoes, vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
But they're just additional. And so as long as Chris is getting in the gym, he's weight training, I'm seeing that his VO2 max looks good. I like his cardiovascular minutes per week. I like that his nutrition looks good and all these other component protein looks good, etc. Biomarkers look good.
Yeah.
Like everything looks good. If the sauna makes you feel better, hell yeah, knock yourself out. If the cold plunge makes you feel better, hell yeah, knock yourself out. I may be picky a little bit about when you time some of those things. Like I may not tell you to go do a big sauna session and then go outside in the middle of summer for a run.
Yeah.
Like a lot of sweat just got lost. I'm also not going to tell you to like go do a cold plunge and then go train. Like cold muscles just aren't going to produce as much strength as non-cold muscles.
Because I've read recently, you see lots of reports of when to do something. Is cold plunge negative if it's done right after a workout?
It can be.
Yeah.
I think the data's pretty close to saying that it might inhibit recovery a little bit.
Okay.
However, to what degree?
Yeah.
Is kind of meh. I mean, I think when you're really looking to dial in things, like I would recommend people move it away.
Mm-hmm.
Treat it as like I've worked out and then a few hours later, maybe I hit the cold tub versus I just worked out and I'm hitting the cold tub.
Yeah.
Also, what I've seen with some guys is they'll work out and they feel so banged up from their workout that they go to the cold plunge.
Oh, okay.
That's a problem with their workout.
Yeah.
Like you really shouldn't be leaving feeling like someone beat you with a bat after a workout. Like you can feel tired, you can feel but you should generally feel a little bit better when you're done than when you started. Again, you might be tired, but you should feel good. I've had some guys that are like, yeah, until I've been beaten to the floor and, I'm like halfway into my casket. Yeah, that's an official workout. And some people, personality-wise, they need that. But if you're doing that and then getting into a cold, like you're just not helping. You're just damaging things. And your body has to be able to recover. I tell people a lot, you don't recover by lifting, or you don't get stronger by lifting weights. You get stronger by recovering from lifting weights.
Okay.
So we want to emphasize that recovery part. So cold plunges, it's funny, they did some research on a full immersed cold plunge versus if you just stuck your face in a bucket of water with ice in it.
Yeah.
And the same results kind of were shown in terms of like how people felt and what have you.
Thousands of dollars less.
Thousands of dollars less and does the trick. But there are, I will say, I can remember I don't want to say way back when, but this was maybe a few years ago when the whole, there was a lot of people hating on cold plunges, like this is crap. And there's still a lot of people that do that. I'm a little more in the middle on them. I'm like, hey, if it helps you, who am I to tell you not to go do a cold? If it makes you feel tougher and better, then great. And there is something visceral about I survived the cold plunge.
Well, yeah, there's that mental aspect.
There's a mental aspect to it, which I don't think you should discount.
Sure.
Again, as long as it's not impacting the other things that matter so much. But I think it was Eric Cressy that was athletes for generations have gotten into cold tubs and it seems to make them feel better and they feel like they can perform better.
Yeah.
So who cares?
Yeah.
That's kind of my approach to it is the
doing
data.
Hard things.
Yeah. It's the data doesn't seem to say that it's going to really negatively affect you, especially for the average guy.
Yeah.
The average guy that's just, you or me, that's just trying to be fit, look good naked, impress our wife every so often. You want to be capable of hanging out with your kids.
Yeah.
Is the maybe 1 or 2% difference that you get from the cold plunge? And that's a big maybe.
Yeah.
A big deal, but if it makes you feel better, not particularly. I'm not going to split hairs about that.
Yeah.
I will split hairs if you're cold plunging for 60 minutes a day and you haven't lifted in 7 weeks.
That's the thing.
So I think it has its uses. I think if people like it, knock yourself out. It's really not going to be detrimental to you. Same thing with the sauna.
Yeah.
And really most other of the modalities like that.
What about salt in your water?
Not a huge deal because we get so much salt in our diets. Our diet is pretty chock full of salt. It's really not a huge thing.
What about the people who, I eat a lot of just meat, vegetables, and fruit. So I'm not eating a lot of artificial flavors or a lot of, man-made items. So where those salts are usually in everything. So.
Yeah, it also depends on like if you use salt and pepper on your steak.
Mm-hmm.
It also depends on just like look at the potatoes. Like, are they fresh potatoes? Are they not? Like, everything has some semblance of salt in it.
Yeah.
The other thing people think is that they, especially now with like products like LMNT or Relight or all of these that are really high sodium, they think they need them because it's a performance part and they need their electrolytes to be balanced.
Yeah.
The average person doesn't really have to go crazy with that.
Yeah.
It does come into play for people who live in warm climates and are endurance athletes.
Okay.
So if you are an outdoor laborer in Florida working on a roof right now, that probably comes into play because you're flowing through. I mean, there's some data showing that those people need like 10 plus liters of water a day. Whereas the average male needs like 3.5 or 3.7 liters of water.
It's 72 degrees right now.
Right. Like it's just not, we make more of it than we need to. Endurance athletes is another one. If they're out doing 60, 90, 120-minute runs or bikes, or like they have to replenish what they've lost. The average guy, it'll make a difference a little bit. But it's not what we've hyped it to be. I think electrolytes, again, are kind of one of those things where it might be helpful. Is it going to hurt you? No. Like if you drink it and your body's like, this is not of use to me, your body just gets rid of it because that's what your body's good at. It's more important that you're getting enough water in a day, generically speaking, which for most men is like the 3.7 liters. For those that exercise. So 3.7 liters is total.
Okay.
So most from food, you're going to get 20-ish% of your water. And then the 80% is going to come from drinking water. So it's, for most men, I say, I need you to get 100 ounces a day.
Yeah.
If you exercise a lot, if you're outdoors a lot, add 20, 30, maybe another thing of water. But that's kind of the general base recommendation is get to 100 ounces because there's a lot of factors like young people, old people. Like old people don't usually have as much of a thirst. And so they drink less water. They become more dehydrated easily. That causes all sorts of issues because their kidneys are like trying to hold on to water. And so their urine's more concentrated. And then we have like, kidney stones and there's levels to it.
Sure.
But for the average guy, get to 100, 120 ounces a day. You're probably okay.
Okay.
But I at least have the threshold of like, get to 100 ounces. Make sure that you are eating like foods that have water in them. So lots of vegetables and what have you.
What about sprinting? Because I read a stat like people over 50, less than 1% sprint.
Yes, and they all should.
Yeah.
Now there's a systematic way to do it because I remember early on when I had my older guys, when I had my middle-aged guys sprinting, even my like young 30-year-olds or late 20s who like played college sports, inevitably hamstring injuries just pop up because they haven't sprinted, right? And they're just not used to that length of that hamstring muscle going. And so, yes, it is something that I encourage and or have most of my men do unless they're really pushed back against it. Which some people are just like, I just don't like to run.
What would be a good protocol? Like during a workout in the middle?
So sprinting is always done pre everything else.
Oh, really?
So sprinting is...
So if I walk in the gym, what would you prescribe?
You would sprint
warm
first.
Up, sprint.
Yeah, you'd warm up.
Lift.
You would sprint, and they wouldn't have to be big sprints.
Yeah,
it might be like warm up, and I'm just throwing this out there as a generic for someone who's been running or has been sprinting or is used to running. It might be like normal warm up, and then you do 3 to 5 40-yard build-ups, where it's like 10 yards you kind of build up, 15 yards, you're almost there, 20 yards you're at like 80% of whatever max sprinting is. You sprint out the rest of the 40, you walk back, you repeat that 3-4 times, and that might be it for that day.
Just that alone.
That alone would be of benefit, right? There's some great info on like testosterone changes. Like sprinting is just a big testosterone booster. And so there's like some good stuff on that. It's also just like it's the most force the human body can produce into the ground when that foot hits contact. So it's, and it's also, I think the biggest benefit is that it's you moving fast.
Yeah. Like we said,
I was saying earlier, you just lose that as we age.
So sprint,
sprint,
if nothing else,
throw medicine balls, jump, bound, hop, skip, jump rope. I love jumping rope because it just forces you to get up and off the ground. All of those things are good. Now, the caveat to all of that is so many people are too deconditioned to do it.
Yeah.
Like I would never just have someone come in off the street and go, hey, time for you to sprint. Like, no. It's It's the same thing as like, hey, you've never back squatted before. Let's test your 1 rep.
Yeah.
It's just not a smart way to approach things. So for a lot of guys, it's just, have you been running?
Yeah.
No. Let's just start jogging.
Yeah, we got to ease into
ease into this. Start jogging. And then we'll start doing jogs with, a speed up, where it's like you're jogging at 50%, you speed up to X. Or if we have a time, we're like, hey, I'm running my mile in 8.5 minutes. One of the tests that we do is a 1 mile run. Like your mile is 9 minutes. So in this test, I want you to be running at like a 9:30 for the first minute and an 8:30 for the second minute. So it's just an increase in speed.
Okay.
And then as time goes on, we'll bump that down, bump the distance down, and we'll develop them into more sprinting.
Yeah.
But it almost always starts with, are you running? No. That's the first place to start.
So we need a month of
can you even run?
Yeah.
And every man's going to be a little bit different. Like some people, it's like, hey, one of the reasons running's hard right now is because you've got an extra 80 pounds.
Yeah.
That makes life hard. Let's just start with getting some of that off. Yeah. And then we'll get to this point. Like most men just aren't going to qualify to sprint. Sure. Just like they're not going to qualify to, they can't even do a pull-up. Like I'm not going to like try to make them bang through. Like that was one of the things we did for a while was when CrossFit was really big in the beginning, which I actually like CrossFit quite a lot because I think it's made people more healthy than anything else has done of sorts because it gave them something competitive to do. But a lot of guys were going in and doing things that they just, like they couldn't overhead squat and they were trying. They couldn't back squat well and they were trying. They're doing pull-ups that are really repetitive and they're just not built to handle that quite yet.
Yeah.
And so it's important to take every individual and go, okay, what do you need to assess it all? And then go, okay, like we need to start with this and then baby step it. But after 5 or 6 months, if you've made some good headway there, lost a little bit of weight, gotten a little bit stronger, you're able to hang a little bit longer from a bar, all of a sudden like you're able to dumbbell bench or you can back squat, whatever. Okay, now we can add the next layer. But once you've built that foundation, you can really do a lot long term.
All right.
It's just getting through that initial phase.
Everybody's got to get that base. Now, what about in the weightlifting world? How many reps would you recommend and time resting? And I'll use the example of lately I've been doing higher rep sets of 12 and the 3-minute rest, which seems like an hour and a half that I'm just sitting around the gym.
Yes.
What do you think of that approach?
So 2 things. Lifting weights falls into kind of 2 categories, which is a little confusing, but it's true. So there's strength training and then there's hypertrophy, right? And they do overlap quite a lot.
Hypertrophy means
bigger muscle. Right? So muscle growing.
Yeah.
Right? And so the way that I explain things usually to people is if you want to get stronger, you need to be you're going to get stronger if you're doing higher rep sets. So if you're doing sets of 12, like you'll get stronger in the sets of 12, right? But if you were looking for like, how strong can I be? It's like, what's the most amount of weight that I can lift, right? And once you get past a few reps, fatigue sets in. Like if I tell someone, hey, we're going to test your bench press and you put 225 on the bar because it's an easy number and you get to 12 or 13, like, there's an endurance factor to the muscle that we're testing.
Your cardio is kicking.
Your cardio and also just muscular endurance. Like how long can the muscle sustain this versus the strength factor is like how much weight can you move? Like that's what powerlifting is. That's what weightlifting is. Weightlifting adding a bigger power component. But it's how much can you lift?
Yeah.
For the average man, if you really want to see strength like that go up, you're going to be in the 3 to 5 rep range for 2 to 3 sets of that movement. Okay. If I want to see that strength component go. For most men I work with, we're going to do something in that range. And it doesn't have to be to failure. We can boot that because that's an important conversation because people don't need to go to failure as much as they think they do. But once you start getting north of that, if you're like, hey, I want to be muscular, right? Or I want to be more muscular. I want to be stronger and muscular and that whole thing. Anything from 5 to 30 reps essentially produces the exact same amount of hypertrophy is what our research shows us.
Really?
So if you do, sets of 6 to almost to failure, or if you do sets of 25, almost to failure, the muscular gain is essentially the same for all intents and purposes. There's a muscular endurance component, obviously, as you get past that 6, 7, 8 range. But it's not like if you take a bunch of time off in between that it's going to optimize muscle growth.
Okay.
Strength, yes. So if you're like, okay, if I have guys that I'm like, hey, I want you to work up to a heavy 3 or 4 of trap bar deadlift. And then I need you to take about 2-3 minutes off, fully recover as much as you can.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're going to take like 90% of that for sets of 5. I want them to have some bigger rest in between, because the more recovered they are, the more they can express their strength. Their body is adapting to that. When you get tired, you just can't lift as much because you're tired.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of really just hypertrophy work, if you will, is I really don't need you to recover a whole lot. Your rest could be super minimal, and I'm going to get a lot out of that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like a roundabout way to answer that question, but that's kind of what I want you thinking of, is like, if my goal is strength, I want to make sure that I'm not super fatigued when I do the movement.
Mm-hmm.
If really you just want a big hypertrophy pump, there's absolutely nothing wrong with hitting, like, I'll use pull-ups as an example. Set of max pull-ups when you've only got like 1 or 2 south of failure. Rest for 30 seconds. Do it again. One of the rules that I like that the guys at Renaissance Periodization, Dr. Mike Israetel, who's probably like one of the bigger YouTube folks on in the world, he's just very funny and he makes everybody laugh. I like the way that they approach rest, where rest as long as you can to make sure you can do 5 reps at least, and then go right back to doing what you were doing, or you can go back to doing what you were doing. Because again, that 5 rep range is kind of where hypertrophy starts to happen at equal numbers. So it's not like you need to, like, if I want my biceps to be bigger, if you do a set of 15 and then you wait 3 minutes and do another set of 15, you're not going to get anything more than if you'd waited 30 seconds or 45 seconds and you only did 11 or 12 the next time. It's about how close the muscle gets to failure that dictates the result that we're trying to find.
Yeah.
Most people aren't actually working hard enough to see results. Like, I mean that in the sense of people will do a set of, this happens all the time. You'll have, I know you've seen this too. Friends of yours, they go to the gym a lot. Okay. 3-4 days a week. They do the same routine all the time. They don't really look any different. They're like, they don't look not fit, but like their muscles aren't bigger.
Yeah.
Like they lift weights and stuff, but like they don't look any different. Most of that is because the workouts are just easy now, right? If they've been doing 200 pounds for 8 reps on the bench and that's all they do every week, the body adapts to it.
Yeah.
It's not actually making a change because it's not hard enough. Like the body has to actually be made.
It's got to be challenged.
It's got to be challenged to overcome it.
Yeah.
The body adapts, you recover from it, and then you get stronger. It's a really simple system.
Yeah.
You know, it's the general adaptation syndrome, but that's it.
Yeah.
You know, it's a pretty simple thing. So that was a long-winded answer for that. Excuse me.
That's great.
Good people.
No, it's important because, you know, one of the things we also have to be cognizant of, though, that I fear of the lower reps is injury. If I'm doing a set of 5 and it's a lot of weight, I don't want to get injured. Yeah.
So one of the big...
Because you're moving heavier weight.
It's one of the big stigmas probably around heavier lifting is that it's more likely to cause injury.
Yeah.
That's just not true. Like if you look at like injury rates amongst people, it's, yes, people can get injured doing that, but like for people that recreationally like power lift or whatever, their injury rate is no different than people that like play golf and things of that nature. The bigger problem is that they are doing it with crummy form or not. It's not well done. They're trying to move more than they should.
Swinging the body around.
They're swinging, like it's not well created, right? There's going to be form breakdown when things get heavy. It's very true. But the way that I do things with most of my guys is that if they do a 3-rep max, will be what I'll call it. When they get to the 3rd rep, I want them to be able to say to themselves, I could have done 1, 2, maybe 3 more repetitions. You leave it's called reps in reserve, right? It's not a true max. It's a almost max, right? You will get almost the same output, the same total strength by leaving a couple of reps.
Really?
Than if you go to failure. Right, so that's one of the things we can circle back to it now, is a lot of people think that you have to fail for something to be good, right? And in people's programming, in their blocks, there will be times, like a week maybe, where we'll push to no reps left. Like that was a full...
The last one
like, that was as many pull-ups as your body could do, right? With strength work, it's pretty rare, unless it's with a power lifter or a weightlifter, and we have to know, like, this is roughly where you are. But for the average guy, we're going to go, okay, we tickled failure, but we didn't actually go to it. You're going to get the same 99% of result by getting almost to it versus not. So as a general rule, if you're weightlifting, you're training, if everything you do, you tell yourself, okay, I just got to rep 12, I could have done 2 or 3 more, which is subjective. That's hard. It's not easy to do. But if you do it over time, like guys that work with me will tell you, you just get better at it. Especially if you know what failure kind of feels imminent or how hard something should feel. Most guys will get to like 8 and they're like, oh, I've only got 2 left. And I'm like, hey, do as many as you can. And they'll get to 30. And I'm like, so it wasn't 2 in reserve. It was, it takes time and training. It takes them getting used to it. And so, but if all you did was in everything you lifted, curls, bench, back squat, lunges, you always leave 1 or 2 in the tank. Like, I could do 1 more and I'm tired and I can feel a pump, but I'm not quite to failure. Good, stop. Record it, move on to the next set.
Okay. And then how do you work with you? Because you have clients across the country, right? So nowadays, the beauty is people can get trainers elsewhere, right? So how does your program work?
Yeah, I think that the virtual training world has become very popular. I mean, you can go on YouTube or you can go on Google or ChatGPT and be like, hey, write me a 12-week strength program. And it will, and it'll be a good program that'll do what you need. I think that what I have done, at least that has been successful for me, is that it's about the individual more than anything else. Like, I have groups of guys that I work with that are just like kind of all similar, and they'll do like a similar program. But for me, like, the way that I work with clients is on a very me and you basis. Like, I don't want to say that I'm like trying to be best friends with all my clients, but my interaction with them is very tight. It's, hey, how are we doing? What's our training look like right now? What's our nutrition look like right now? It's creating, it's no different than, you can get a lot of benefit. I can hand an 8-week program to you right now. It's pre-made and whatever. You'll get a ton of benefit out of it. What I do is create that extra 10%. Where it goes, okay, are we dealing with an injury right now? Right? Hip's been giving us some issues. Maybe squats are going to be a problem, but lunges don't seem to bother you. Let's push that in, push squatting off to the side. How does that feel? Well, that actually feels, not too bad. Maybe we're dealing with a sickness. You've got something going on with your blood work that we're like, this is a little bit funny. Let's work around that. We're losing some weight. Maybe that's going to change how we approach your strength and conditioning. Maybe we're going to chill out a little bit on some of the heavier work, or we're going to dial your protein a little bit more while we're losing some weight to try not to offset things too much. Maybe you're trying to get ready for something. Hey, we're going on this, I have people all the time that we're going to play golf across 3 weeks in Oregon, and it's a lot of walking in hills and whatever. I want to prepare for that.
It's good that people are preparing for that, because
like it's a lot. Or they want to go on big hikes with their family. I just had a couple people get back from Europe, and they just climbed everything. And we trained in that vein leading up to them doing that. And so that's kind of where I come in, is creating that personalized touch of, where are you? What are your goals? And how do we meet them? Maybe it's just playing with your grandkids. So basically, I then develop their strength and conditioning programs. We'll edit their nutrition kind of as needed. Where are they at? Where's their weight at? We'll go do like a DEXA scan, usually is what I make most of my guys do if they can, which is basically just a fancy x-ray, if you will, that looks at muscle mass and visceral fat and subcutaneous fat. And we go, okay, this is where your muscle mass is. And this is where you are relative to other men. This is where your fat is. This is where you are relative to other men. This is where we want it to be. We'll get a VO2 max test done, or we'll do a test that, gives us a parallel to that, and go, okay, this is where this is. I need this to be in the age bracket below you in the good category or in the excellent category. I want to see these numbers change. My job is to help them get from where they are to those higher levels of performance. So I've spent the last 8 months, funny enough, it's funny how much I dislike systems as a whole, like people that sell like the weekend courses and like versions of things, because a lot of it can be hocus pocusy. And I say all that to say that I just made like my own fitness assessment called the Taylor test. And the whole point of it is to actually get a baseline for where men are. And it ranks them against one another and against where they are nationally. We'll get to it. Because I think we do need standards for what men are capable of doing. And so I've started implementing that with all of my guys, is like getting a real number.
Yeah.
Like, hey, you fall into this category. So compared to other men I work with, this is like where you rank.
Yeah.
On your, like, as a number and as a percentile. And then nationally, like, this is where your pull-ups are, your push-ups are, your 1 mile run, your 300-yard shuttle, your agility run. This is where you stand.
Okay.
And then I've added in extra testing to be like, okay, we're testing some other things. There's strength testing, there's endurance testing, and functional testing, mobility testing that's kind of extra there.
So if you can measure it, then you can improve it.
You can improve it.
Yeah.
And people like, a lot of the men that I work with like that degree of competition to a certain extent. Not everyone does. And so for some people, like, they may be like, hey, I don't really care where I rank compared to other people. That's fine. But for me, the data says,
even relative to yourself.
but relative to yourself, ultimately, it's the guy in the mirror.
Yeah.
It's, is Chris Greco today who he wants to be? Like, tomorrow, what's the comparison?
Yeah.
I love, there's a great quote talking about, I killed my clone today. Do you remember the really fat guy from, remember the Titans?
Yes.
Louis Lastic.
Yeah.
So his name is evading me now. But anyways, he was like 400 pounds, lost all of it. And now is like jacked, yoked,
amazing,
big health nut. And he went through this whole story. And I guess there was some guy from like a special operations that had this quote about, I killed my clone today. And the whole concept being like, at the end of the day, you face your clone from like the day before, right? Did you do anything today to be better than that clone?
1%.
Right? 1% better.
Yeah.
And it's a fight to the death. And if you kill your clone that day, that means you were better that day than you were the day before.
I love that.
And ultimately, that's kind of the goal for men. And there's going to be days where you're not. There's going to be days where you're 10% worse than you were the day before. On the aggregate, are we getting a little bit better?
Yeah.
Right? And so that's, outside of working with men in a strength and conditioning, nutrition, biomarker, accountability world, I really take a lot more of the, where are we as men? Where are we as husbands? Where are we as fathers? I think that fitness is, for some men, actually becomes a way to get away from their families, or it's a coping mechanism, which doesn't make it a good one.
Yeah.
It just makes it one. And so I've put a little bit more effort into where are we as a society, men wise, and that's becoming a bigger part of what I do. I got a book coming out here in the fall, which is called The Heroic Man. So the first part's all fitness. Okay. It's all health and nutrition and biomarkers and training and, nutrition and supplements and all of that. And then the second and third book are going to be all about, fatherhood and being a husband and having good friends that are brothers. And the last one is a more spiritual God book for men. But that's kind of where I've started attacking things.
Well, you think of it, if you go to the gym, you have these goals, you accomplish them, you feel better, you look better, that should translate into a happier person at home or at work as well.
Almost always.
So that's...
Yeah. It's how you treat it. I think that for most men that I work with, when they start training, they just feel better.
Yeah.
They look better. They're more confident. Their sex drive improves because their testosterone levels generally stink.
Yeah.
Like 1 in 4 men over the age of 30 have, low T. Seeing those go up, it's just a little bit better.
Yeah.
They got a little bit more of a, whisper in their wife's ear. She blushes a little bit. Like there's a little bit more of that happening.
Yeah.
But they feel stronger. I love when I get a text like, hey man, I went to bed last night, took my shirt off, and the wife was like, oh, been doing some things.
Yeah.
Nice. Like that looks good. Like there's a confidence boost that comes with that, but they also feel capable. Or it's the reason that I've used, forging capable men as a tagline. It's, I've got to go fix the car. Sure. I've got to lift all this stuff into the garage.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can throw my kids in the pool. I'm amazed at how many dads have said, I don't feel like I can go to the pool and play with my kids because I get tired or they want me to throw them and I can't. It's
funny. I had a client years ago. He threw his back out and for a year he was ruined because he was lifting his 3-year-old in the pool and it ruined him.
Yeah.
I mean,
those are things you should be able to do.
Yeah.
There's no, I like to look at it as like, if you're, you're a father, you're a husband, etc. Like you're just a man, you should be able to protect everyone in your life to the fullest extent. You should be able to comfort them all, be their safe haven, but be capable of anything that comes their way. And the only way you do that is by training for it.
Yeah.
right? It doesn't mean that you necessarily have to be like lifting weights all the time, although that plays a big role. But like you should be capable of running a mile.
Mm-hmm.
Like if for some reason you have to go run and catch some fool who tried to like steal your kid,
Mm-hmm.
you should be capable of doing that. Like
Yeah.
if you ever had to wrestle somebody, you should be strong enough and capable enough to do so.
Yeah.
Right? If you needed to go help your community put up a baseball stadium, you should be the guy that they're like, hey, we need Chris to come over because we just need some muscle to get this beam up.
Yeah.
You should be able to do that, right? And there's confidence in that, and there is purpose,
Yeah.
which, men are just struggle immensely with. Is like, what's my purpose? Is it just work? Is it this or that? But just being capable can be a purpose in and of itself for the people that you love.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Well, I love what you're doing, Jackson. You've done a great job for me and my family, and so much of what you're talking about is beyond just what we look like in the mirror.
Yeah.
And I think it translates into being a better person and mentally and physically. So it's all together. So thanks for coming in.
course,
Beyond the
man.
break. And good
Pleasure.
luck with can't wait to read that book.
Yeah, well, I'll see if I can. The baby came, and so
Okay.
all of a sudden I was like at the cusp, was it the 90% mark? And then this beautiful little girl showed up, and so been a little busy. For
All right.
us.
Well, the book can come out in November or December. So enjoy the baby.
We'll do that. Thank you so much.
Jackson.
Appreciate
Take
it.
care.
Thanks for tuning in to Beyond the Break. If this conversation brought you value, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss an episode. We've got more real stories, sharp insights, and powerful turning points coming your way. See you next time.